So picking up where we left off Friday in Appendix 7, remember, we cannot leave I in the denominator. That is not simplified. We have to eliminate I. So in order to do that, we multiply by the conjugate of your denominator. Can someone tell me what the conjugate would be of 5 minus 12i? 5 plus 12i. We're just flipping that sign. All right, so let's do our numerator. This is our numerator. So let's do that. 13 times 5 plus 12i. So go ahead and pick up your calculators and distribute, multiply. I already recorded this class. I'll record it again though. Okay, so that should give us 65. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have my calculator. Plus 156i. I'm trying to remember from first period. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
All right, now let's do our denominator. So that's a binomial times a binomial. In other words, there's two terms divided by a subtraction or addition sign. So we're going to make a box. Now, if you learned another way, FOIL, distributive property, do whichever method you are comfortable with or accustomed to doing. I am going to do the method that the majority, I'm always going to go with the majority. So fill in all four squares. When you multiply by conjugates though, these two squares should always cancel. If they don't cancel, that means you didn't multiply by the correct term. So we have 25, negative 60i, positive 60i. Now this corner, I'm going to write this actually on the outside. When you multiply that, you get negative 144i squared. But we learned on Friday that I squared is negative 1. So in this last corner, we're going to put positive 144. So just like we predicted, these cancel out. And this is what I'm left with. Go ahead and add that together. 25 plus 144. And I think that's, what is that? 169? All right, this is good. This is a really good answer. I'm proud of you, but I'm still taking off a half point. Why am I taking off a half point? I can divide those three numbers. What number goes into all three of those numbers?
3.
Bigger than 3. Bigger than 7. Bigger than 9.
12.
Close. 13. So go ahead and divide all of those numbers by 13. You're like, I'm just gonna take the half point on that one, huh? All right, go ahead and divide those 3 by 13. All 3 of those have a factor of 13. I think it's 5 plus 12i all over 13. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. That doesn't happen much, but we ended up just kind of flipping the original answer. All right, that is my final answer. All right, so now we're still in Appendix 7, but we're going to move on to simplifying I. So I don't want you to write, I just want you to copy down this column. So we're going to talk about, just copy down that first column. Don't copy them all down. We're going to go one column at a time. So I to the second, I to the third, I to the fourth. The only exponent that we can leave on I is 1. Anything else, we have to simplify it. All right, so let's just talk about the first column. I equals I. That's just what that equals. Who remembers what I squared is equal to? -1. All right, so now let's talk about I to the power of 3. What I'm going to do is split this 3 apart. I'm going to split it apart to I squared times I. Do you agree that these still add to 3? 2 plus 1 is still 3? Okay. So I squared times I means I have -1 times I. And what do you think -1 times I is? -I. All right, I to the fourth, I'm going to split that up to I squared times I squared, which would be -1 times -1. And what is -1 times -1? 1. All right, so these are the only 4 answers that you should ever give me when you are simplifying I. It's either going to become a positive I, a negative I, a positive 1, or a -1. So now let's move over to the next column. Go ahead and copy down those 4. So now we're going to use I to the fourth as my anchor, because I know that I to the fourth is 1. So what I'm going to do, because I know that, is I'm going to break this apart to I to the fourth times I. I to the fourth is +1. 1 times I is I. So I to the fifth is I. I'm going to take I to the sixth and split it up to I to the fourth times I squared, which would be a +1 times a -1. Because I to the fourth is 1. So that will give me -1. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the exponent and I'm trying to break it down to in terms of 2's and 1's. Because as long as you know that I equals I and I squared is -1, then you can do any exponent no matter what it is. So I to the power of 7th, I to the power of 7, I'm going to break that down to I to the 4th times I to the 3rd. Now I'm going to break that down one more time though, to I to the 4th, and instead of I to the 3rd, I'm going to break it down to I squared times I. So that would be a 1. And then I squared is -1. And we have I. So what's 1 times -1 times I? -I. And then I to the 8th, I'm going to break that down to I to the 4th times I to the 4th. Which is 1 times 1, which is 1. So let me zoom out. Do you see the pattern that's happening here? It's like a Ferris wheel. It's a Ferris wheel. It's only going to be these 4 answers. And once it hits 1, it starts back over. 1, -1, -I, 1. So now we hit 1, so we can do these really quickly without having to separate it. What do you think I to the power of 9 is? Because we're back to the top. We're going around the Ferris wheel again. So I to the 9th is I. What about I to the 10th? -1. What about I to the power of 11? -I. And what about I to the power of 12? 1. All right, so let's talk about simplifying this, because every time we hit the power of 4, anytime we hit an exponent that's a factor of 4, the clock resets. Yes, Alani?
I was gonna ask, how do you always know to always separate but from I to the 4th place?
Because anytime you hit a factor of 4, it resets. So the next 3 will make more sense. All right, so what I need for you all to do is help me count to 100, but we're going to count by 4s. So we're going to start at 4. All right, what comes next? 8. Keep going.
12, 16, 20.
We only got 3 people that know their times tables. After 28, 32, 44. All right, let me come down here. And then we got, what's after 52? Poor Willie, he over there confused. Just use your fingers like this. You okay? Okay, after 56?
60, 64, 68, 72, 76, 80, 84, 88, 92, 96.
Okay. So, this is why I wrote that. Every time you hit I to any of these powers, it's going to equal 1. This is like your reset clock. Okay? So, let's go to the next, and I want you to just copy down these 3. We're going to talk about how do we do it when the numbers are higher. So, we're going to simplify those down. So keep it in mind that we're on the Ferris wheel. Every time we hit 4, we start over. And it's always the same 3 answers. If you could, it would be helpful. It would be helpful. I'm gonna write it in the front. No, I'm gonna write it back here. Integrate is taking up a lot of space. Let me take this down. It would be helpful for you if you could remember these 4. If you could remember that I equals I squared is -1, I cubed is -I, and I to the 4th is 1. That would help you, because remember, it's only going to be these 4 answers. All right, so let's look at 29. How high can I go in this list without going over 29?
28.
All right, so I want you to write I to the power of 28. I to the power of 28. How many i's are left over from 29? So what I have is I to the power of 28 times I. And remember, any I to any of these numbers, any of these exponents will equal what? What does it equal if you hit one of these powers of 4? 1. So this is going to change to a 1. And I have an I. And what's 1 times I? I. So I to the power of 29 is I. All right, 67. How high can I go without going over 67? 64. So I want you to write I to the power of 64. How many are left over? 3. Now, if you can remember this list, then we'll know that the answer is going to be -I. But if you don't remember, then I want you to break down I to the 3rd again, because we all know I squared. So that's just 1. Now I'm going to break this down to I squared times I. So I have 1 times -1 times I. And you just need to figure out what you get when you multiply those 3 terms. So we got an I up there, so it's either a positive I or a negative I. Negative I. Yes.
When you get I to 64, I don't understand how it's not just 1.
Yes. So every time we hit a 4, it's like it's a power. It's like a Ferris wheel. So it's gonna be I -1 -I1. Then I start over. It's the same thing. So every time I hit the 4th notch on my Ferris wheel, it's 1. It's 1. It's like it resets. All right, 42. How high can I go in that list without going over 42? So I'm going to break it apart because that's when my Ferris wheel resets itself. So I to the 40 is 1. How many am I left over with after I take out those 40?
2.
So we already know that this is 1. And what's I squared? So what's 1 times -1? And that's why I'm saying, if you remember these 4, then you're okay. Because after you take out that highest power, you're only going to have either an I squared, or an I cubed. That's all you can have left, if you take out the right number. All right, 24. Is 24 on my list of numbers that I wrote? So what's the answer? All right, I'm going to give you 3 more that I want you to try to do on your own. I'm making these up, so I don't know the answer. Okay. So let's see, what number am I thinking of? I to the power of 78. And then I to the power of 95. and then I to the power of 101. So just try. Just try. See if you can find those three numbers, three answers. And I didn't pick any numbers that are on the board. So it's either going to be positive I, negative I, or negative 1. And I made these numbers up, so I don't know the answer. Sorry, y'all. We working them out together. Zero ain't a possibility. You make me nervous. Put pencils down when you have all three. I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to try. Take a guess. You got a 33% chance of guessing right. It's only 1 of 3 answers. All right, 78. How high are we going on this list? 76. So I have I to the power of 76. How many are left over? So I know that this is 1. And what is I squared? And 1 times negative 1 would be? That is the answer. Who had negative 1? Okay. All right, 95. How high can I go? 92. How many left over?
3.
So if you know this, then you just know the answer is negative I because you have 3. But if you don't remember, then you can break this down to a 2 and a 1, which is okay. I mean, you don't get extra credit for doing it in less steps. So I'm going to break that down again. Because we should know what I squared is. And we should know that I is I. So this is going to give us 1. I squared gives us a negative 1 and I equals I. So what do you get when you take 1 times negative 1 times I? Negative I. Who had negative I? Look at y'all. All right. How high can I go on my list without going over 101? 100. We at the top. So we have I to the power of 100. How many do I have left over? This is 1 and I equals I. So the final answer would be a positive I. All right, who got at least 2 right? 2 out of the 3. I'm happy with that. That's the end of Appendix 7. Let's start Appendix 9. Aren't you guys excited? All right. Appendix 9. So now we have covered everything that you need to do homework to, and that one is not due until Wednesday. So title your notes A9. A9 is, we're only going to do a little bit more because I don't want you all to get too far ahead from first period. They kind of set the tone for the rest of the day. So A9 is about interval notation and solving inequalities. That's what that is about. And this is homework 3, so you have 2 homework assignments due this week. Before I forget, tomorrow you do have your first skills check. It's going to be open note because it's the first one. It's over Appendix 6. There's 3 questions. A factoring question, a quadratic formula question, and a completing the square question. That's it. Nope, nothing to do with I. That's not on there. So I'm telling you now. So it's not like, oh my God, I didn't know. Yep, you do know. I told you right now. All right, so let's go ahead and do a quick review of interval notation. Interval notation. Remember, if it's equal to, we have to use a bracket. And if it's not equal to, we use parentheses. That's really the only thing. Who remembers interval notation? Just a couple people. Well, I'm about to remind you. Oh, and the third thing that you need to know is it's always the smaller number first and the bigger number second. Now, that is important. Well, I'm not going to put parentheses because we don't know if it's going to be a parentheses or a bracket. That's really the 3 main things about interval notation. So we're going to practice writing a few things in interval notation, and we're going to just solve one very easy inequality. A9 is short. We'll be finished with A9 tomorrow. It's solving inequalities. That's all it is in interval notation. All right, so I want you to write these in interval notation. That's what you're going to do for this first one. So this is called algebraic set builder notation. When we use the greater than and less than signs, we will never use this. Every single thing that you do, this whole entire course is in interval notation. When we get to graphing, which I believe we start graphing very soon, so please make sure you have graphing paper. If it asks you for the domain and range, it has to be in interval notation. So we're just going to do a really short review of interval notation. Not going to get too deep. So for this one, this says 0 to 4 is my solution. Notice how they both have equal signs. They both have an equal sign, so that means both sides will have a bracket. And that's it, that's your answer. For number 2, Is this a greater than or a less than sign? Greater than. Now, in homework 2, I believe it asks you to graph on the number line. Do not worry about that part. I just want the interval notation. That's all I care about. But for this one, I am going to graph it on the number lines because I want to make sure we understand what's happening. So we have the number 8 is not included. So there's an open circle and is greater than, which means it's going this direction. And it never stops going to the right. The largest number in the world is infinity. So the interval for number 2 would be 8, comma, infinity. Infinity never gets a bracket because it's not a real number. It's a concept. It's impossible for me to say, I'm going to give you infinite number of points. That's not possible. So it always has a parentheses. If it's positive infinity or negative infinity, it will get a parentheses. All right, number 3, notice how one side is equal to and the other side is not. So it is possible to have a bracket on one side and a parentheses on the other. So for this one, I have -1 to 2. 2 gets a bracket, but -1 gets a parentheses because -1 is not included in the interval of the solutions. All right, last one. This is what? Greater than or less than? What's this inequality? Less than. My brother, who he still teaches middle school, but he would always say this looks like an L. It opens like an L would, but whichever way. Less than. So that means that I'm starting, well, I'm not starting. So 3 is the number. It's included, so that would get a closed circle, but this time it's going to the left. Now, if positive infinity is the largest number in the world, what would be the smallest number in the world? Negative infinity. So when you write this, remember, this is the smallest number in the world. You don't get no smaller. That's going to come first because it's the smallest number. And it ends at 3, parentheses and a bracket. All right, one last question. Don't worry, it's super simple. And then we'll call it a day. Yes, Randy? That looks like a bracket? Oh, why didn't I? Oh, okay, good question. This one doesn't have an equal to underneath. You see, it has to have that little equal to line in order for it to get the bracket. If it doesn't have the equal to, it gets a parentheses. So going back here, that's a good question. Parentheses if it's not equal, brackets if it's equal. All right, last one for the day. We're only going to do number 1 and we're going to end there. When you're solving an equation that is an inequality, when do you flip the sign? When something is negative. Okay, we're on the right track. I think I heard somebody say it. When you divide or multiply by a negative. That's the only time you flip the sign. So if you need to write that down, write that down. When you divide or multiply by a negative. So go ahead and solve number 1. It's just a 2-step inequality, but write your answer in interval notation. It should not have a greater than or a less than sign in there.
You said right down, right? What did you say right down?
What? I don't know. What did I say right down? Oh, okay. Yeah. When you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the sign. So what are my two steps for number one? Add 7. Do I flip the inequality?
No.
Okay. So 3x is greater than 9. All right, now what do I do? Divide by 3. That's what Raven said. So x is greater than 3. So you don't have to graph it, but if you need to, you can. That means I have a 3 right here. 3 is not included and is greater than, so we're going this direction towards positive infinity. So the smallest answer that can be a solution is 3. 3 gets a parentheses, or does it get a bracket? Looking up here, is this one equal to or no?
No.
So what will 3 get? So it's 3 to infinity. This is how I want you to write your answer. Everything we do is in interval notation. All right, go ahead and copy down number 2, and then that is it for today. Good work, y'all.